In 1994, Daytona USA exploded onto the arcade scene across the globe. It was a product of Sega's AM2 division, many of the same guys that had done virtual racing before it. It ran on the beastly Model 2 hardware, a newfangled polygon board capable of texture mapping, and loads of other cool effects. At the time, I didn't think there was a better looking game you could play, and I even enjoyed its crazy soundtrack. It went on to huge critical and financial success for Sega, pretty much solidifying the turn to polygon gaming as the next big thing. Sega made many more racing games after Daytona, but none of them brought in the same kind of money or notoriety. When the Model 3 was ready to take over as Sega's new flagship arcade technology, AM2 was back with a sequel to try and recapture the same magic. In this episode, we will be taking a look at the legendary Daytona USA 2, its tracks, its music, and its gameplay. Was it as good as you've heard? Let's find out. Daytona USA 2 Battle on the Edge was originally released in June 1998, showing up first in Japan and then a few months later in the US and Europe. Much of what you encountered were ideas from the previous game, now with a much more potent presentation. You again get 3 tracks, a beginner, advanced, and expert option that had different themes and a different amount of cars you raced against. Astro Waterfall Speedway was the easy course, and it again begun the festivities with a rolling start, 8 laps, and 40 cars on the track. It was oval in design and was set inside a dome with lots of natural touches like trees, waterfalls, and wildlife. The second track is Joypolis 2020 Amusement Park, a 4-lap 20-car battle that rampages through a theme park that has a haunted house, outer space, and ice areas. The third and hardest track is Virtua City, which runs just 2 laps against 30 cars and has you negotiating twists and turns of a major metropolitan area. The gameplay again puts a heavy focus on speed and power sliding over realism, but does add a few new tricks like slingshotting, a real-life NASCAR technique of drafting the car in front of you and then pulling past them. You have a choice of 4 viewpoints again, and this time you have easy, normal, and hard cars to choose from, each with different handling and speed characteristics. You also have improved AI that drives more like human players, an improved damage model that allows pieces of your car to be removed, and it supports up to 16 players with local link capabilities. While it does play a bit differently than the first, it won't take you too long to adjust to this if you are an experienced Sega racing fan. Once you place in the top 3 of a track, you get an ending for that track. Rounding out the gameplay features is the ability to interact with what's going on around you. Pressing start at different times has different effects, something that was in the original Daytona as well. Since Daytona 2 was released in 1998, it came out on the upgraded Model 3 Step 2.1 board, a vast improvement over the chips that powered Virtua Fighter 3. And in 1998, you couldn't find a better looking game anywhere on anything. Home, PC, arcade, it didn't matter because this was the absolute pinnacle of consumer level video game technology right here. The detail in the cars, the stuff populating the areas around the tracks, and everything in between looked nothing short of breathtaking. And despite it looking this way, it still blazed along at a level of performance that was rock solid and smooth as silk. One thing that really helped was the sheer abundance of variety in every area of the design. Each track looks completely different from one another. The cars look different from one another. Damage isn't just wobbly wheels and bent geometry. Smoke effects are everywhere, and the set pieces are among the best an arcade racer has ever seen. The first time you drive under the giant boat in the amusement park, your mouth sits agape. The first time you see that giant red skeleton attack the spaceport, you can't help but to run the rest of the race with a giant shit-eaten grin plastered across your face. And these things never get tiresome. You want to see it each and every time. The Model 3 was a true leap in graphical fidelity there for a few years, and this was the ultimate showpiece. Today in 2020, finding this one sitting in an arcade still fills me with an immediate desire to run over and see its majesty. To me at least, it was easily among the best of what could be accomplished at the time. If you are anything like me, you felt the music in the first Daytona was just as important as the graphics and gameplay. It's true that it was cheesy as all get out, but there was a sing-along like nobody's watching quality to it that made it such a joy to listen to. The man behind those ballads, Takenobu Mitsuyoshi, would return to create the music for this one too. He is credited as both the sound producer and composer, and again lends his iconic voice to what you'll hear, at least in the Japanese release. The US and European games would see Dennis St. James of Burning Rangers fame do the lyrics, an option that can be adjusted in the settings to choose which one you'd rather hear. As always, it's time for you to choose whether you enjoy these new tunes or not, so here are a few selections for you to judge.
Show your power, now to steal you one thing. Fumes are burning hot, above the car. Feel the heartbeat of my machine through this tight seat. I feel every motion of my machine. The race starts when two of us become one. Bright lights fill my eyes. Feel the heartbeat of my machine through this tight seat. I feel every motion of my machine. The race starts when two of us become one. Bright lights fill my eyes. You have no choice.
In late 1998, Sega updated Daytona USA 2 with the Power Edition. It changed and added a number of things, including a re-imaging of the beginner track, changing the indoor dome into a more NASCAR-like environment. A new Hornet car was added that was designed to handle much more like the original Daytona car. It has a new opening montage that was more cinematic, and it has some tweaks to the gameplay that allowed you to be much more aggressive with the drifting mechanics. There was also a new endurance style option that allowed you to go after all three tracks at once. Outside of these things, it's pretty much the same game. I prefer most of the changes here outside of the beginner track design. I love the indoor forest setting of the original, and felt Power's Edition replacement really pared back the beauty of that. You guys have no idea how hard it is to actually come up with something negative to say about Daytona 2. In a review, you have to look at things honestly and speak up when you don't enjoy it, even when you know the fandom is going to try and explain it away in how you choose to play it. I sat here with Daytona USA 2 for hours capturing footage, and not once did I ever feel like there was something that failed to meet my expectations. The fact is, the game is a graphical showpiece of 1990s polygon technology that still looks excellent now. The gameplay is fun, easy to pick up, and challenging to master, particularly if you mess around with the difficulty. What's left to critique exactly? I guess I can complain that there are only 3 tracks and only a handful of cars. I suppose that I can moan about the music not being quite as memorable as the first. But what I keep coming back to is that the game gets so much right in how it looks and plays, none of the other stuff matters a lick. This is, for the most part, a perfect arcade racer that has stood the test of time and remains as playable today as it was 22 years ago. It was the result of years of technical know-how, expert game design, and a level of polish that coalesced into one of gaming's most memorable titles.
Goal! Your place.
The footage you have been seeing in this episode has been running on an emulator known as Supermodel. As good as this game was, Sega never brought it home, leaving me little choice but to capture it this way. It was said to have been in development at one point for the Dreamcast, but that never happened. Despite home consoles now being orders of magnitude more powerful than Sega's Model 3, we still yet to have seen a home version of any kind. Since you basically have no choice but to emulate it if you want to play it at home, you have the option of really cranking up the visual bells and whistles to make this already great game look even better. If you have little experience setting up emulators, this can actually be rather difficult. Finding a version of Supermodel that plays it somewhat accurately can be a challenge itself, and then getting it up and running and playing properly even more so. Setting up a controller can be an arduous process of finding a button layout and analog sensitivity that works for you. You can see from my performance here that I still have yet to find settings I can do well with. This leaves the less computer savvy among us with no option to play Daytona USA 2 outside of tracking down an arcade machine. Outrun 2 does contain some of these tracks, but let's be clear, it isn't the same as having a full version of this game. This is a damn shame because Sega has a bona fide classic here that deserves a modern update. The next time Sega gets a wild hair up its ass to do Sega Ages again, I hope to God they realize we have seen enough of Sonic, Fantasy Zone, and Space Harrier. It's time for games like this to shine, and Sega has a stable of them to pull from to easily revive the Sega Ages name and make it mean something again. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.